I call Senator Back.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, I rise today to continue a conversation I commenced in December here in the chamber and have spoken about in the media in recent times, and that is the opportunity for young people from their mid-20s to their mid-30s to be able to opt in, if they want to access their superannuation funds to meet their higher education loan program scheme. I will speak, Acting Deputy President, about three groups of people. Firstly, those who are graduates now and have got a help debt which they would like to relieve themselves of. The second are people in their mid-20s to mid-30s who did not avail themselves of a university education when they left school but would like to do so. And the third group are those Australians overseas who have superannuation which is going backwards in their fund in Australia because administrative costs are exceeding their interest levels, who have got a help debt, who want to pay that help debt back but do not have the access to their superannuation overseas, and they want to use their Australian super for the purpose. Acting Deputy President, I will make some points. First of all, this is a scheme which people could opt into if they wanted to, but simply if it does not suit their purposes, they would not. The second point I want to make is that it would not be available to school leavers simply because they have alternative options for higher education, and secondly, they would not have accumulated a superannuation dividend or a superannuation sum. So this is a scheme in which the person could use their own funds to improve their position financially and or hopefully to improve their position in terms of higher education. I would speak firstly about those who are now a graduate. They're in their mid-20s to mid-30s. They have a debt which they are repaying. Perhaps they might be on $70,000 or $80,000 a year. They'd be paying 8%, somewhere around about $9,000 possibly per year off their help debt. They could access that level of superannuation, Acting Deputy President. They could pay down that debt, relieve themselves of the burden that they face at that time, and it might be one associated with a young family, a home mortgage or whatever, in the knowledge, and I wish to make this point strongly, that in the knowledge that at a later stage in their lives, when the burden of debt has released from them, they will repay the funds that they have taken out of their superannuation scheme with compound interest, so that by the time they retire, they will have at least that same sum of money back in their super fund. Even those who have a degree, Acting Deputy President, we know the requirement these days for retraining, for taking on new skills, perhaps for doing a master's degree to improve their circumstance. So that is the first group who would be assisted by this scheme. They opt in if they want to. If they don't want to, they don't need to. Our colleague, the member for Fraser, Mr Lee, asked in a tweet of Senator Back, and I quote, "Hoping Senator Back can explain the benefits of using tax-advantaged super growing at 7% to pay off HECS debts growing at 2.5%. The answer is I can. I don't know what Mr Lee's circumstances were. I know what mine were in my early to mid-20s. Acting Deputy President, young family, paying off the debt that I had accumulated for my university degree, and I was certainly cash poor. The value of those funds to a young person may well exceed the eventual value upon retirement. That is the situation that Mr Lee addressed to me, in the memory again, because he probably didn't understand that one of the principles of this scheme is that the person does eventually repay over the next 20 or 30 years of their career. They pay back, so they've got at least as much in the scheme. The other criticism I suffered was from our good Senate colleague Senator Carr, who seemed to have the idea that I was attacking low-paid workers, which brings me to the second group, Acting Deputy President, and that is those who have now reached their mid-20s to mid-30s. They didn't get a university degree. They may now be in an office where others around them are doing better financially now, and because of their qualifications are going to continue to do so. That person, again, may well have a debt, they may well have a young family, they can't afford a university education. What a wonderful opportunity for them to be able to say, yes, I can. I've got those $15,000 or $20,000 in my super fund. I am going to use those funds. I am going to now go and study, possibly part-time, in the knowledge that when I graduate, I can use those funds out of my super fund. I can pay off that help debt. And, Mr Acting Deputy President, if we all genuinely believe, as we say in this place so often, that a person with a degree will earn up to $1 million more over their career than a person who hasn't got a university degree, well, I would say to Senator Carr in his criticism of me, what this scheme allows the lower paid worker, the person who's semi-skilled or unskilled to do, is to increase their skill level, to cease being a low-paid worker, if they want to be aspirational. And of course we know that at retirement, A, they have the obligation to pay that sum back, but if we believe that a graduate will do better over their career, that person will have far more as a university graduate with a better job over their career than they otherwise would have. So I say again, it is a scheme in which, if it does not suit that person to avail themselves of that opportunity, if they want to leave the funds in their super account and either not go on and study further, or they want to in some other way find those funds, fine. All I'm saying is it is the person's own money. This is an opportunity to improve their educational opportunity, to get a degree or to get a higher degree, to avail themselves of that chance so that throughout their career they can now improve themselves, aspire to a higher position, a higher education, therefore a higher salary and a higher circumstance at retirement. The point was made to me by the gentleman who really is the architect of this program, Mr John Adams, finds himself in that same position and has allowed me to actually use him as a case study. Married, young family, has at the moment a debt around about $9,500 a year that he's paying back. Says to me that if he had the opportunity to access some of his superannuation, to relieve himself of that $9,000 or $770 a month now, he may well, in fact, as his wife and he want to do, start a family. She could stop working. They would then have sufficient funds to be able to allow that circumstance so that they can start a family. A circumstance in which he says at the moment he wants the value of those funds. To answer Mr Lee's question, he's happy to forego. I don't know who's getting 7% on their super at the moment, but nevertheless, he's happy to forego the future benefit because he wants the immediate benefit now. Acting Deputy President, there is a third group who I believe would be assisted by this scheme. Only in this place in November, early December, did we legislate to make it more applicable to people working overseas, Australians working overseas, with a help debt for the government of the day to actually recover those unmet costs. When I started speaking about this in the media in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I had conversations from people in Scandinavia, in Asia, saying to me, we know we've got to pay back our HECS or our help debt. We have got superannuation willowing away in Australia because the administrative costs of their super fund exceed the actual interest that they're earning on it. They cannot access their Australian super to move it overseas to where they now reside. And at least in the case of the Scandinavians saying to me, I'm not likely to come back to Australia. I realise I've got a debt. I want to pay the debt. I've got funds in my Australian superannuation account which are diminishing. Allow me to access the funds that are in my super fund in Australia to repay my debt to the Australian government for the higher education that I gained. It is the case that we have got a substantial sum of money out there in unpaid HECS or help, paid for, of course, by the Australian taxpayer. This would be a benefit, Acting Deputy President, to our bottom line. We have a circumstance in which people with funds in their super account wanting to access it to either relieve themselves of the debt or, in the case of someone without a degree, to access it to improve themselves in terms of their higher education, or those who are overseas who want to discharge themselves of that debt. This is worth consideration. It is worth, in my view, the support of all sides, and I for one would be very, very happy to engage further with Senator Carr and with others on what they see as the disadvantages of this scheme.
Thank you, Senator.